Hello, everyone, and welcome back to MF Uncensored. Don't forget, if you guys are listening to us on the go, you could find us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also find more of our content on our website, themisfitfaction.com. There you find links to not only this show, but some of our other shows like the Multiverse Fancast and Cinematic Adventures. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Paul, and with me via the Zoom studio is a man who you're going to find out why, very specifically, his story resonated with me, and he doesn't even know this yet, but I am a child of divorce, and I grew up in a divorce household, so I saw the ups and downs, the good, the bad, and then it's not until I was an adult, like in my 30s, that I learned so much more about what was going on behind the scenes. And I feel like if I had a show or a podcast or something to listen to support me during that time, it would have made a world of difference. But it's my honor to introduce Mr. Jonathan Emery. Jonathan, how are you today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
I'm really sorry that I totally caught you off guard. I know we just did a whole pre-show, and I
Yeah,
didn't even mention that, I was a child of divorce, and that was one of the biggest reasons that when you messaged me, I was like, yes, got to have him on. But
good. You're
yeah,
good. Yeah. Wherever you want me to begin, I can go back to my childhood as well, and just kind of share that, which I probably had never shared with too many people yet.
yeah, no,
So,
it's funny because growing up and, obviously you'll tell your story about divorce and moving through it, divorce doesn't just hit the two people involved with it. It impacts a lot of people. It impacts, kids, cousins, families. Like I still have stories like and memories of my childhood of like the bad stuff, but also so many of the good things. And now it's funny because both my parents have remarried. They got divorced. I'm 36. So 30 years ago they got divorced. And it's so funny looking back on it now. And then we do like a family event, and like my step parents on either side are like talking to each other. And like, it's so strange now. And it's wild how that sort of thing changes. But for our listeners, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself first?
yeah. So as of now, I do have a full-time job still, but I also have a podcast, which I do post at night, primarily people coming on, sharing their journeys in life, all different journeys. You know what I mean? I don't really care where they're coming from or what they went through, as long as they're open and vulnerable to talk about whatever they want to share. So that's been a blessing in disguise. That's been for over a year. I do have a son who's almost 14, a daughter who's almost 11, or is 11, I'm sorry. And I have a dog, which you might see in the background every once in a while running around. So,
That's fine. We have a cat who's going to be running around at some point. Don't worry. We're good. We're good.
yeah.
But for you, you mentioned having a full-time job now. Why is that so significant?
Well, I gotta have it to support myself and the kids, and the house that we had them born and raised in for the time being. So yeah, I have to have that. Unfortunately, in a way, where I don't want to have something like that, I do have to have that to support that part. And obviously, there's child support and all that good stuff to go with it too.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I lost you. Oh, sorry.
yeah.
There we go. You got me?
Yep, I got you.
All right. I'll hit record again. Here we go. All right. So for our listeners, though, you said you had a podcast. What's the name of your podcast again?
Life's check mark.
Life's Checkmark. And you started it, you said, for about a year you've been going?
Yeah, since November of last year, I'm around episode 64 right about now. So I'm slowly doing like two a week almost now because I got
Oh,
so much
wow.
of a backlog. Yeah, I got so much of a backlog. So I'm trying to push more out quicker. It's tough, but it's fun. Yeah.
What's been your favorite challenge of podcasting so far?
Favorite challenge? That's a great question. It's learning all the AI stuff right now, to be honest with you. There's a lot out there, and I've played with a whole bunch of different tools, and there's not one that seems to fit everything that I would want, right? So, like I tried Descript and everybody's like, oh, I love that, and it didn't jive with me for what I was looking for. So I'm playing around with another tool currently to more put out there for Facebook posts and make everything more appealing in a way instead of me having to sit there and type everything out. Now I do reread through it all,
Oh, yeah.
obviously, because it doesn't pick everything up exact. For instance, the ones I just did said something about prisoner and stuff like that, and it just picked up the wrong language, so it had nothing to do with it. So you gotta be really careful.
Yeah, so for the AI stuff, I use ChatGPT a little bit for, just structuring show notes and stuff like that because in my brain it's all there. It's just putting it in order because otherwise I won't follow a script or anything like that. I'm terrible. I love
Right.
Descript. I'll be honest. I do use it for it's funny. I was using it before the AI stuff, and now they
Yeah.
just introduced it, so I'm kind of not really using it too much. But I
Yeah.
just found a great AI tool for our YouTube channel that I use that re-optimizes our videos. So it like changes the descriptions a little bit, adds thumbnails, stuff like that. But it's funny because sometimes same thing. It'll pick up the wrong thing and do an entire episode description. I'm like, that's not even what the episode's about.
Sorry. I know.
It's wild. Like we live in this crazy time. Like my wife, the producer of the show, producer Melanie, as we love to call her, she uses Canva. She's huge on Canva and she's so good at it. Like she can make an entire presentation in 4.5 minutes. And I'm still sitting there going, how do I add shapes? But like they just added their AI tools to it too. And I'm like, I can't. It's too much.
It's too
Way
much. Yeah.
way too much. But let's go back in time for your journey because it does start with losing a 20-year job and navigating divorce almost at the exact same time. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a job. So first of all, my ex-wife, I call her it's my kid's mother. I really don't want to call her ex-wife. That's just how I relate to her.
Yeah, yeah.
So we met when I was almost like 19 and she was like 15, 16-ish. And then that was it. So it was like, for a while we were dating and then we wound up getting engaged and got married and then had the kids. So throughout the whole time, like 19 years old, I had this job and I held it for 20 years. I advanced a little bit in that company and I always wanted out, right? I was like, yeah, I want out. So I was interested in real estate. I bought a few investment properties and I never really stayed focused. So I never really grew from that. Although that was like yeah, this is what I'm going to do. 20 years, let's see, when it was around the COVID time. So it was about almost 3 years ago. I lost my job and it wasn't due to COVID. They just had another plant in another state and they said, oh, this one's doing better. This one's not doing as well. So they just shut our doors, right? And my position was I was in the logistics area. So I was focusing on shipping, receiving, making sure the guys underneath of me, they had the machines running with material all the time. So around October, prior to me leaving, I left around in May of the following year. Around October, production stopped.
Mhm.
So I saw like almost 50 some people walk out the door around that time. You
Jeez.
know, yeah, it was crazy because a lot of the guys were in the production area,
Mhm.
and I had to stay there to focus on. Uh, I mean, basically, this place was four printing presses, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 slitters, which is they took a big roll and they cut it down to size. And it was for food, foil and paper and stuff we were producing, printed. And we had, I mean, so the place was booming, and then we had to take it down to an empty shell, like literally nothing. So I was like one of the last three guys left to walk away and say everything's gone. That was crazy. So I looked at it as like an opportunity, a blessing in disguise.
Right.
Like I wanted something like this to happen, so I could not that I wanted that, but it's like in my head, like okay, this is like the push, right? Yeah, okay, what now? So I didn't know what to expect, and I knew some guy. He was in the insurance field, and he's like, "Oh, you're a great person. I'd love to take you on if you're interested." So, and I was interested, and I explored that. I did that for almost 6 months or whatever. I got one client, which was fun, but it was the journey, I would call it, of learning a whole different avenue. Like I was
Yeah.
never in sales. I was never into trying to connect with people. I still find myself as a introvert, so I don't really went out there and network or nothing. I never pursued that. It was fun. It was a turning point for me, and unfortunately, at that time, I guess things shifted in my marriage that I had, and she wound up taking almost a full-time job. The kids were home every once in a while for COVID, and I was out of a job, so I was home with the kids, when they were here. And I was focusing on what I was doing during the day, even at night. I was trying to build something, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was still learning, right? So I'm making YouTube videos. They're still up there. I don't do that anymore with the insurance, but they're still up there. People will watch them, and just I'll leave them there if somebody can get some value out of it. But it turned out to a point, where yes, I didn't provide some areas in my life that I should have, but I was looking at the ultimate goal of like, this is where it can be if I just keep going,
Hmm.
right? And somebody else probably didn't see that part, and other things were happening on the other side. So, anyways, long story short, for the divorce part, it came to a point where I didn't see it coming. I had no idea. So in my eyes, there was some kind of uncommunicated expectations,
Hmm.
where I wasn't hearing anything. Nothing was, we never had these sit down discussions. And unfortunately, things unfolded. And when I found out things were not going as well as somebody wanted them to be, I I went ahead. I stopped doing the insurance thing right away, and I got another job eventually. And it's not the one I have now, but it was something that gave me something, right? So it wasn't that. Anyways, we got divorced. I mean, she brought the word up, so it was like in May of, I don't know, almost 3 years ago. I really don't
Hmm.
remember the exact date. It's done, but it's been 3 years ago, almost come this May. And I'm just going to share with you like the process on my end of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how, as a guy, like I don't want to say I put somebody on a pedestal. I don't, but I always remember dates. I always remember gifts. Like, like that was me. Like,
Right.
I was showing up in the marriage in my eyes, right? And so I want to join. I don't know if you listen to Dad Edge podcast or not.
No.
It's for men. So I listened to it a long time ago, and then they came back up, and it was like January of that year before she said something. And I connected with a few great guys that gone through some stuff or were going through it. So I was able to call them every once in a while. I'm trying to figure shit out.
Yeah,
Sorry if
yeah.
I, yeah.
No, curse away.
But yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. So I was trying to figure it all out. Like mentally, emotionally, I lost it. I lost like 20 pounds. I couldn't sleep at night, and this was before it even became a divorce word, right? So I reached out to a guy that was in the group, and he had this like little course that he called mastering masculinity or something, or somehow like bringing it back, right?
Okay.
So it was like a 4-week course, and so I think it started like in April, the end of April, and it wasn't my intentions to become better to fix things or anything, but it was more for me to learn what I might have lost because and he explained it. I don't know. There's feminine and masculine in everybody, right? The
Yeah.
energy.
What's his name?
So, huh?
What's his name?
Jeremy Roadruck.
Okay, because we just did an episode with a guy named Alan Watts. He goes by the title The Love Engineer, and
Okay.
he same kind of concept, the masculine and
Yeah.
feminine energy. I was like,
Okay.
I was about to say if it was the same person that
Uh,
I would have small world,
no,
man. But that's
that's
funny.
awesome. There's so much of it out there now. Like I never even heard of it, right? So
Mm.
I'm like, what? So, but he explained it to me like she probably took on the masculine role with the job and everything, and I took the feminine role, taking care of the kids and stuff, and it made sense, right? It just flip flopped, and so, anyways, I got to learn a little bit something about from what he had to share through that course, and talking to these guys, it kind of got me to a point to like, because I really didn't want anything to happen. I mentioned counseling, I mentioned all that,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, somebody else didn't want it. It was too late, whatever. And it got to the point where she said the word, I said, I'm done. I'm like, I'm tired of trying to figure it out,
Mhm.
And so I was like in that state of relaxation in a way. I wasn't, and I was able to sleep then, what I mean? It was kind of weird, right?
Well, it's that relief. It's like
Yeah.
we're finally be on the same page and not necessarily in the right way, but
Right. Right. So fortunately and unfortunately, in a way, I didn't want it for basically for the kids.
yeah.
And I could dig into a little bit why, on my end, but I it was a blessing in disguise in a way, an opportunity because now I start the podcast, I start connecting with all these people. I've been to places I've never would have been to probably if I was still married. I wouldn't have got up and just it was not me, it was not me at the time, but I completely changed. I focus on a lot of areas in my life. But I'll come back to that if that's okay. I just
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to I just want to go back in time a little bit more, because a lot of people in my in my family, they were divorced. And like, and I grew up like, I don't want this. Like, I don't want these people. I don't want to be divorced. I don't want to be that person. Right. So maybe I tried a little too hard to keep it together. I have no idea. Right. But there's one thing I found out when I was almost like 20. I moved out of the house, and it was me, my mom, my dad, and my sister. So my sister decided to go to the Navy, and so I left the house. She was leaving, and then we come to find out that my mom and my dad were divorced, and we did not know, and they were divorced a long time ago, and just decided to live with each other, try to make things work every once in a while. I was told, I remember a story that my dad told me. He passed, but he told me that, I remember when you were 8, you asked me where my ring was, and I said, "That's your mom. And I'm your dad. That's all you need to know." And like that stuck with me. And yeah, so I mean, like, I'm sharing this because I don't know if them staying together changed me and my sister for being raised and
Right.
growing up. But looking back, me now, growing up, I'm like, I can only imagine all the misery and the pain and suffering they could have gone through
Oh
to
yeah.
try to stick it out just for the kids, right? So that's how I'm looking at it too. Like, I wouldn't want that on my kids if we were to try to make things work out. You know, I don't see that as a benefit to anybody. I'm not a professional in that area, but I just don't see it. So that's where, growing up and not knowing that was kind of an odd thing. So with the coming back to like the area part, with me transforming in a sense, I focused first emotionally, right? I had to figure out, how am I going to make this work in a 3-bedroom home? I'm still here, right? In a
Yeah.
3-bedroom home with all this noise and stuff, and coming home, and dinner or whatever's made or whatever it was, and it's not the same anymore.
Right.
So, most of the time my house is empty, and I didn't have a dog at the time, so I didn't get her until probably almost a year ago. And it was different. So I had to take that in. I had to take in the silence, and for me, I had to accept that this is what life is right now,
Mhm.
and things will get better, and slowly things changed for me. So I got the job I have now after we got divorced, or after the word came up, and then obviously paperwork was filed after I got this job. But anyways, that became like an opportunity, and that was like a blessing in disguise. And so I just learned since then, since going through all this, to start accepting these opportunities, not just like push people away every once in a while. So I did that area, right? And I want to say, like, I started a morning routine. I started meditating, writing in a journal every once in a while. That never became a thing in mine, but it was there if I needed it.
Right.
And I started to listen to YouTube videos, for, motivation, whatever, the people to build you up. They're all over,
Everywhere.
Les
Everywhere.
Brown, all,
Okay.
yeah, you're right, right. But it was good. It was uplifting in a way to keep going, keep moving forward. And then every once in a while you hear that they'll mention divorce or something. You're like, oh yeah, that's me.
Hey, they're talking about me.
That's right, exactly. Yeah,
Like
we
they
got this.
know.
But that helped me in that area. And for whatever reason, I listened to a podcast, and I forget who it was or whatever, but the guy said, just wake up and start saying thank you. And
Mm.
he's like, it's really hard to do, to make it a habit. But once you keep going, you know, it sticks. So I started saying thank you. It took a while, yes. And the thank you was pretty much for being alive and to appreciate your life and to keep moving forward in my eyes. That's how I looked at it. So I don't know how long it took for me to do this, but it worked. And then eventually, sometime in January of this year, actually, I started saying thank you, God, right? And that was never a thing of mine. I never really went to church when I was a kid sometimes, but not as
Yeah.
often. And so, the whole spiritual thing started coming to me where I'm like, I don't get this. This isn't me, right? This is different. So what is this? So, I reach out to a friend, and, he's like, oh, maybe you're just like exploring. And he goes to church and stuff, so
Yeah.
no push, no nothing. He's just like, look, if you want, you can come to the church, check it out. He recommended a Bible that he had, which they don't print anymore. So I found one on eBay. So I bought that. It's 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 a Bible made for fathers to translate it to their kids or something.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's like simple in English, so I can
Oh
understand it,
my
which is
God.
good.
As a kid who, I don't want to say forced. Force is a terrible word.
Right.
Highly motivated and taken to church every week. Ironically enough, that was also part of my parents' divorce.
Okay.
I was my father's side is Catholic, my mother's side is Lutheran. So we were raised Lutheran, but we went to a church that was close to my dad. So on the alternating weekends, my dad would drop us off at church and my mom would meet us there. And like that was part of their setup, which I never really realized as a kid. But growing up, religion was one of those things we had to do. And it's funny, I'm more interested in learning about religion now as an adult on my own leisure than I ever was when I was forced to wear my button-up shirt, go to Sunday school. Like we did the whole thing, Sunday school, confirmation, like the whole nine. And part of that was both my parents were like, once you get confirmed, it's on you. I'm like, that's a lot of responsibility for a 13-year-old to
Yeah,
decide their
right.
religion right now. But it's just funny you bring that up because obviously we're talking about divorce and we're talking and now religion, and I'm like, oh, and this is why I knew we were gonna have a good conversation. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry I interrupted.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, you're perfectly fine. So yeah, so I started reading the Bible at home. I still read it once in the morning too, every day. Basically I've been books, whatever they call it. I still, I don't figure it all out, but so I do that just to take it in. I've been praying since I've been going to church almost every week, not every week, but when I started, I'm like, look, I'm going three months in a row, like every week. And I missed one, I think, due to the weather or car breakdowns, I think. So that's become a thing in mine too. Is like trying to push myself to do something for 3 months to make it like a habit or something, or become really good at something like that. So I do take my kids because I have them on Sundays, and it's a struggle sometimes because it's early, but they're accepting it. I don't push them as much as to sit with me. They don't want to do the Sunday school thing. They're that's not for me. Sometimes they'll sit with me, at church and watch everything going on. Or there's a lobby that I'm like, look, you're here. If you're gonna go out there, they can watch on the screen and stuff,
Yeah,
TV and listen to it. I say, look, just take something in and tell me what you've learned, and that's what's been happening recently. I'm okay with that. Again, I'm not pushing them. Just come with me, and if they want to believe or whatever in life, that's up to them. That's their choice.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're there. I'm like, there was one day we missed because my daughter didn't get up in time. I'm like, look, it's okay, not a problem, and of course she was upset, but you know, things happen. I wasn't too worried about it. But so that's been a big game changer for me spiritually. So, lately I've been trying to pray more at night too, and just run through my day, like, thank you for this day. This is what happened. I do have a vision board, so I kind of run through that as well, and just pray on what my vision is. Yeah. So, and then, I, the other area for me was the fitness part. So I have the whole, I don't, maybe somebody was watching me way back when, right? So where I was at, working for 20 years, somebody had a gym set in their basement, and they were into lifting, and they're like, oh, we're moving to Carolina, but nobody wants to take this equipment. And at the time I had a cargo van, the ones that nobody
Oh yeah.
likes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, watch out for that guy driving that van. It's
Why
scary.
does he have puppies? What?
That's right.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
exactly it. Yeah. That was me. No, I'm like, look, if nobody takes it, let me know. I have a cargo van and I have room in the basement, and I'll grab it for you. So I did. I wound up getting it for nothing, and it sat in the basement. I really never went to town with it until everything happened here with the divorce. I worked out probably 5 days a week, trying to do it on my own, and I had the time and everything, and I got results, but I didn't get the results I wanted. So January came, I met somebody through an entrepreneur group, and I hired him as my trainer, and now I do it 3 times a week, and I'm happy with where I'm at. I can watch what I'm eating more often. So that's changed a lot for me too. And I mean, I recommend that to any guy just because it's more for mentality as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it gets the aggression out of you, any depression, whatever you got going on in life. If it's really getting to you, it definitely cleans it up a little bit.
That's actually what I
It's
was doing right before. Like I
there
same
you
thing.
go.
So when my wife and I moved into our current home, right before COVID, we moved in like 2019, like right like when they were just talking about this new coronavirus. And we moved in and there were two caveats. Whatever house we were looking at,
Yeah.
she needed a spare room for her library and office, and I wanted a fully done basement. Those were the two things that we were looking for more than anything. We didn't care how many bathrooms there were. We didn't care about anything else. Just those were the two things top of the list. So I managed to get not only a fully done basement, but there's one room for my entire podcast setup, like the whole studio, and then the other room is like a leisure room with my entire weight set because I love working out at home. I'm a very big proponent for it. I went through a lot of issues with body image and feeling certain ways, and just it's been a long road for me in that regards. But I when I first started working out, it was purely for the aesthetic. It was purely like I want to look like this, like I want to look like Brad Pitt from Fight Club. Like that's what like that's the ideal male form.
That's all right. Yeah.
And then it was, well, I want to work out. Now I'm finally at a point where I want to work out because I want to be able to provide physically for my family. Like if I'm not taking care of myself, how am I going to take care of anybody else? And also, yeah, to release that stress, that to feel like just get that aggression out, just like take it all out on the mats and then go and about the rest of my day. I love it. So same thing. It's funny that you bring it up because my basement gym is literally right around the corner from my podcast setup. Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the best thing to have, right? Instead of just going out down the road or whatever and trying to get to the gym, and it's kind of like right there. Other people like to hang their clothes on them or whatever, I'm told, but
Well, that's why my wife wanted a Peloton. She was like, I want the Peloton bike. I was like, no, we're not getting the $4,000 bike with the membership just for it to turn into a coat rack. She's like, it's not going to turn into a coat rack. I was like, okay, but here we are. So it sounds like you went through a lot of transformative steps after all this happened, from changing the way that you work out and eat and also religion and, starting a podcast and listening to more motivational stuff. Where are you at now?
yeah, so great question. I've joined network groups, entrepreneur groups. I've been to a mastermind back in November and slept under the same roof with almost 40 people, all different rooms, but still, I mean, it was just the environment to be around these people that are kind of being, allow you to be who you are and lift you up and move you forward. I met so many people, which now some of them have come on the podcast since
That's
then.
awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. So there's that going on. I'm working on building a course with helping other people, start a podcast and keep going because I find people that started and then they fall off and then they come back, or people that don't know how to start and that, what's the best mic out there? I'm like, come on.
It's
But
funny because like you talk to people who want to start a podcast, and we've done a few episodes like because our show MF Uncensored is topical and also interview based. We bounce around between the two depending on how many interviews I have scheduled for the month. But like we've done episodes about how like we started our podcast. We started our podcast. The Multiverse Fancast was our first show, and it's still going on. Still something that we do more leisurely. But we started in a giant room, like I kid you not, at a job that my buddy and I worked at, with one Blue Yeti snowball microphone. And if you listen to our first episode, which is still one of our most listened to episodes, which is hilarious, it is atrocious. It literally sounds like we're in the middle of a freeway and you can kind of hear what we're saying, but it's rough. But and then it was like, all right, well, we recorded, now what? We had no clue. Like, how do we
right.
find a hosting site? How do we do this? Like, it's wild. And I think having people out there that want to encourage other podcasters, because podcasting is a very saturated market right now. Everybody and their grandma has a podcast at this point. I remember I used to have to explain what a podcast was.
Right.
Like, and people would be like, "What's a podcast?" I'm like, "It's like an internet radio show." They're like, "You're on the radio?" No, the internet. And now we were watching the most recent Ghostbusters movie, and there's a character named Podcast in it. I'm like, that's where we are now. Like, people know what they are. So, like, for you, if somebody comes to you and they're like, "Hey, I want to start a podcast," what's kind of like, can you kind of walk me through what your process would be?
Yeah, first, why? What's going to make you do it? And the other big thing is I question is, if nobody listens to it, would you keep going? Because that's to me, that's the key, right? Like I'm loving what I do because I get to network and connect with all these people. But if nobody's listening, will you keep going? And for me, the answer is yes, because I'm enjoying it just a lot. Now there's people listening, I know that. But a lot of people will say, I'm just starting because I want to monetize this thing. I want to make
Mhm.
money in it. And that's not the case. Like that doesn't happen overnight. Now, people make money because they already have a big name for themselves. And then they go, oh, I'm sorry, podcast. And then they have all these likes and then whatever.
Uh-huh.
Right. So I would first start thinking that out, that it's not all gonna happen overnight. Be prepared, and it takes time, it takes work. I am currently doing it by myself, and like I shared with you, I do use AI, which has been recently. That's new. It's all new stuff. So you can get a team, you can pay for it, you have money, but I think learning it and then maybe handing it off later would be something to do. And then the other thing would be, we could talk, where it's audio, video, we had this little discussion in the beginning. I think if anything, do both. That way you have both ready to go. And if you ever just want to you have the video available, and then you can broadcast it out if you want later on down the road. But at
Mhm.
least you have it. That's how I look at it. And I'll be honest with you, I've seen more growth on my end with the videos right now as well, especially with YouTube, like you were talking about earlier. And I don't know why, but man, if that's what people want to watch, listen to, whatever, man, go for it. But I do know YouTube's picking up with the podcasting world real quick.
Oh yeah.
So I've noticed that. The other Another quick thing I would share would be to connect with other podcasters. And that, for the simple fact of finding out what they do, their strategies, not everything that, I mean, they're all going to be different. And, because they're all gonna be different in a way. Like I might be posting more on YouTube than on TikTok or whatever, right? And somebody, you got to figure out your social media platform too. That if you want to advertise there, which one will it be? I played with a whole bunch of them, and you have to stick with one or two, and be really good at it, and let that be that's your baby, and learn it inside and out. Uh, I'll share real quick the AI stuff. I found no tools unless you found them where you can take your video, share it to any platform you want, but you can go ahead and edit the way that you want it on that platform. It does not have. I have not found it
I
because you can.
I found one.
Uh,
There was one called Repurpose, and
yes.
it was pretty good, but it didn't have the editing. It was basically you had to put your thing there first, and then it would repurpose it out. It's funny because that's the biggest problem. And I think it's also kind of a scam. Like all these companies kind of know that,
That's
hey,
true.
somebody wants to take this video, put it into this, and then have it do all these things. No, we'll have this one do this and this one do this, and $15 a month per platform.
That's
Like
right. That's right.
it
Yeah.
sucks. Like, and unfortunately, AI, as great as it is for certain things, it's not always going to catch the right stuff. And I've used AI for article help. I've used it for like all sorts of things. I've tried Chat GPT's like premium features, which are okay, but and that was the thing. I wanted one that did everything, and Chat GPT was like, "Hey, we're introducing plugins." I'm like, "Oh, cool." So it's like, "Hey, perfect article." Like you type in and it writes it out for you. Cool, get that. And then it's like, "Well, you have 5 articles, and then you have to start paying for our service." I'm like, "I'm already paying for a service. Like I can't." And for the most part, like I have a team of co-hosts, but when it comes to like doing all the behind the scenes stuff, it's usually on me, which is fine because I actually strangely enjoy doing most of it. But yeah, unless you have like the money to set up a team or something like that, like I looked into YouTube automation, where basically it's like you hire a team and they create YouTube videos for you. And I was like, all right, let me look into this. So I met with a guy who does it, and he's like, all right, so you would need to start up like 5 grand. I'm like, and this conversation's so dumb. If I had 5 grand to piss away on YouTube, I wouldn't be trying to piss money away on YouTube. But it's funny because like with all these great technological stuff, they're still not the perfect creator one, which is wild to think. Like you would think that that would be their market to get the creators, like even like your Twitch streamers and your YouTube stars, your podcasters, like people that do. because podcasting is now a medium that is spread to all sorts of places. It's not just purely Apple Podcasts and that was it. So yeah, we're still years away, I think, from getting the perfect editing AI.
Yeah, even if we ever get that, right? So with the whole YouTube thing, repurpose, like now that YouTube, you can link your clips to your full episode if you do it in YouTube. You can't do that in repurpose. You can't do that in any other sites I ever tried. So like that's the little stuff that you want. And if you can't find it, you gotta have to just stick with going on TikTok or YouTube and using their tools because they make it that way. You know, it's just the way it is. Yeah, it's just like Facebook. Like I can post something on Facebook online on the computer. Unless you guys know something I don't know, it doesn't go to Instagram right away, right? Yeah, it's so. But if you do it on your app, you can have it go right. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, they got you. You know what I mean?
Well, that
It's
was
stuff like that.
that was my biggest issue with video because I would record. I have a very nice Mac computer that does it all. It has all my editing stuff, but then trying to get it from here to my phone, I was like, it's like a process.
Yeah.
Like I have to first get the clips, put the clips together, put them onto a Google Drive, then pull them onto my phone, then send them, and then delete them off my phone because now my storage is getting too high. Like
Yeah.
it, repurpose was fine for that sort of stuff because you linked your accounts and it did it for you, but I don't know. It wasn't for me. And again, I'm spending money, like all this money. Like our podcast has gone through really cool waves of success. Like we have less than 100 episodes and we're up to 13,000 downloads, which is awesome. This show is the one that we started most recently, about a year or two ago. So like it's been a wild ride. It got sponsored for a while. Like we were very grateful for our good friend Neil, who sponsored the show when it first started to get it going. And we had a publicist, like we had the whole nine, and then just it got overwhelming. It got exceptionally overwhelming. So like when I talk to people who want a podcast, I go, it's great when things are going really well, but you can get burnt out so quick. And that's why like we had to take a step back at one point and we're like, all right, let's reevaluate what our show's going to be, where we're like, as much as I would love to do this full time, it got to a point where this became a full-time job on top of a full-time job. And I was like,
Hey,
I can't. It's too much.
yeah. No, I hear you. But I enjoy it. Just like you do, like with the editing part, I enjoy that too. I'm like, I gotta make this right. This looks good. This feels good. Yeah.
Yeah, oh,
So
it's my favorite. I don't it's exciting. Like it's creating. And I think that as we get older, our imagination goes away and like our ability to create goes away. So if you can find any sort of creative outlet, we make fun of like adults that like use their imagination. You don't use your imagination after the age of 12. Like they don't call it that, then you're just being crazy. But I say that your imagination just shifts and becomes something different. Like it becomes something creative. And if you write or journal or create podcasts or edit, like it's awesome. I have a blast taking a conversation that resonates with me. Like, knock on wood, I've had one bad interview, one bad. And that was more a language barrier and a technology barrier. Those two things kind of hit hard on that one. But like to take what's happening while I'm speaking to somebody and then try and present it to the world, it's awesome. Like I love it. And trying to just catch that passion. And some people are really good at it, and then some people not so good at it. But
right.
it is, it is what it is. But we are getting towards the end of our episode. So at the end of every episode, we do like to play a little game. If you're interested, it is a rapid fire question segment where I pick 4 or 5 questions and I try and tailor them to whoever I'm speaking with and just rattle off answers if you're interested.
See what happens.
All right. What is a book or podcast that has influenced your journey?
The book is The Four Agreements.
The four. I have it. It's upstairs. Yep. My first job gave it to me. That's pretty
There you
funny.
go.
Let's see. If life's checkmark had a tagline, what would it be?
Check your life.
Perfect. It literally wrote itself. Let's see. We already asked one piece of advice for aspiring podcasts. What's a memorable guest or episode from your own podcast?
That's a great question. There's a lot of them. The one I bring up a lot is the woman that she was around 47. She had multiple personalities, and she didn't realize she still had them until something came up around that age, and she was able to see all these people, and I think she had 4 of them that she had to get rid of, and
Oh,
she claimed cleared herself out, and is living a happy life now. But They were all stemmed from her past back when she was a child. And she gave them labels and numbers because that was the age that they popped up for whatever reason in her life. Yeah. So it was pretty wild, and I met her through a Facebook group. Like I had no idea who she was, and it was amazing. And there's plenty more besides that one, but that was that. You want a quick rapid fire answer? There it is.
That's really, you know what? I'm actually going to message you after this and I'm going to ask for that episode specifically because now I want to listen to it.
Okay.
And what is your favorite outdoor activity that you use to recharge?
Hiking.
Hiking, you're
Hiking.
big, yeah.
Mhm.
You're in Pennsylvania. Of course, you're a big hiker.
Yeah, it's
What
great.
else
I
is there to
love
do in Pennsylvania?
it.
But it's funny because when I was working at my first job, I worked at a martial arts school and we did retreats down in Pennsylvania. And I remember just driving through it. I'm like, this is like the nicest place to just drive through. Like it's just so rural and so nice. But that is going to wrap us up. John, thank you so much. If our listeners want to learn more about you or hear some of your stuff, where are some of the places they can go?
Yeah, they can check out my YouTube channel. It's Life's Checkmark, is the channel. I also have Facebook, which I sent you the links. It'd be easier to just share all that stuff. So you can find me mostly on Facebook if you want to chat, with Messenger or whatever, or my email's available, John Emery at 33@gmail.com.
And all that stuff will be in the description.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys check it out. And yeah, make sure you check out John's stuff. I already want to listen to that one episode about the multiple.
All right.
It's funny because I work at a job now where I have time on the road. Like I travel a lot for it. So listening to podcasts, especially people that I've talked to, is I try not to listen to other podcasters' podcasts if I'm going to have them on the show first, just so I'm totally fresh, because then I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to cater to their show style. But I love listening to podcasters after I've talked to them and then having them back on to talk about their show more. So
Okay.
just throwing that your way, just so you're
Gotcha.
aware.
Awesome.
But John, thank you so much for coming on. This was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Right.